Here on the corner of Legion and Red Hill Farm Road, the only farm in Aston, Red Hill Farm, begins their farming season. Seasonal farmer Josh enjoys working on the farm. Josh gives us some more insight on what goes on here at Red Hill Farm on a daily basis.
A seasonal farmhand takes care of almost all the daily maintenance issues of the farm. They weed, plant, harvest, do any sort of upkeep on the infrastructure of the farm, handle irrigation. You know, it's when we do finally get the chickens, we'll be doing upkeep on the chickens, collecting eggs, you know, feeding them, making sure they have water and all that stuff. So yeah. I've never worked on a farm before, but I've been interested in farming for probably about half a dozen years now, and had various gardening and chicken raising ventures of my own in the past. This is my first actual paid position on a farm, but I was a work share here for 2 years prior to this. So this is an almost entirely human-powered farm. So we bring out the tractor, as we have out today, to do a little bit of field prep, but none of the cultivation or harvesting or weeding or anything is done by any mechanized implement. It's all hand done. And so there are a lot of farms along that same kind of like sustainable, low impact kind of movement out there in the state. There are also a lot of farms that follow the old, more conventional, use a tractor for everything, use, you know, petroleum-based fertilizers and stuff like that. We don't do any of that stuff. We're fully organic. We have a lot of food safety practices in effect. And so we're kind of unique because we're the only farm in Aston, and we also have all of these like environmental stewardship standards that we're trying to adhere to, and so I think that makes us fairly unique. We don't use any inorganic pesticides or herbicides or chemicals, fertilizers, anything like that. And so with that, with organic certification, we have to be careful about not both because of the certification, but also because of we want the highest yields possible, because we're not using any artificial fertilizers in our fields. We're trying to minimize things like cross-contamination between species, disease contamination and stuff like that. So we have food safety practices that mostly have to do with cleanliness. And, you know, in between using, for example, or planting various species of onions, we're washing our hands in between each so we don't take a disease from one and move it to the next. You know, same thing with when we're harvesting for our CSA or for any deliveries that we do. We're washing our hands in between everything. We're making sure that everything is cleaned every step of the way, just so we're trying to maintain that sort of like that level of professionalism that is necessary for our operation.
Seasonal farm worker Brendan discusses with no farm animals, controversy arises with the Aston Township and Red Hill Farm that resulted in the compromise of chickens.
We started, this is into our third week, so basically we started in the beginning of the 1st of April, and then we'll go until about the 22nd of November, and so that's the season, and that kind of is the growing season. We have some vegetables growing in the high tunnels, and that can go all winter, but for the most part what's out here in the field grows between that time period, and at least that's the highest amount of needed labor, I suppose. Getting chickens, but we're having some, you know, just details with the township, but it all seems to be in order with that. So in the future we'll have chickens, but right now we're mostly vegetable, and we have some berries. We have some berries to for our members to pick themselves rather than part of the share, and I suppose that's about it. Yeah, berries and vegetables. At one time or another, they had a 5-acre law that you couldn't have. I think basically they didn't want residents to have chickens, and then so that was the push. So if there's any controversy, it's very limited as to just at one time or another the township deciding that they thought that to increase property values and maybe something like that, but that's all speculation. What we do know is obviously that there's this 5-acre limit, that if you're under 5 acres and it's residential, that you're not supposed to have chickens. So I can only speculate as to if that was the case at one time or another, that it was a desire for the people who were in the township politics to be looking after property values and such. My third season, technically I'll be finishing. I started midway through the season, my first season, so so I will finish my second season in July, and then I will be working on to my third season, which I won't be able to complete until the next July. A farm manager who is on the tractor now, you might be able to hear the tractor, and she works with us every day and is out in the field and has a very hands-on role. And then she has administration from the Sisters of St. Francis that she answers to. The Sisters of St. Francis owns the farm, but in conventional sense, the farm manager and many other farms would be the owner of the farm and basically the farmer. There was talk about starting a small orchard. That would have been nice. Of course, a lot of that has to do with budgetary concerns. So the orchard's kind of on a waiting pattern. We are starting up some fields of asparagus, which is more kind of a long-term thing, because they're perennials and they take at least a year for them a year, maybe 2 years for them to even come into any sort of harvestable numbers of spears. Also, there'll be a bed of strawberries going in. That's another kind of a long-term planning. But the big deal right now is the chickens.
Now we're in the potting shed. Red Hill Farm is owned by the Sisters of St. Francis, and this potting shed is basically straight across the street from their convent. And connected to here is our greenhouse with our plant starts and everything. From what my understanding is, straight behind me where there's Newman's dormitories, that's where there used to be an apple orchard less than 20 years ago. And again, I've not been here that long, but also back behind me and then down north a little bit, there was an old hog house there where they kept hogs and chickens. And so, I mean, we're really standing on farmland in many ways. And so in that aspect, I'm just kind of bringing it back. Actually, I have a degree in studio art. I practiced ceramics for a long time, and then I did an AmeriCorps term, and basically 7 years later, here I am farming. Basically, we've been working with the township for a year, because currently residents are not allowed to have chickens or livestock of any sort. Where we're at right now is basically it's getting an approval on an institutional level. The farm is owned by the Sisters of St. Francis, along with a lot of the property around here. Most of the property around here is zoned institutional. However, the farm and any of their wooded lots are zoned residential. So under that clause, I've recently filed a zoning variance so that we can basically tuck our way in there with the chickens, because we are right next to the institutional. We're not in the middle of a neighborhood trying to alter the characteristics of that neighborhood, just trying to add something here. We are an organic farm. We are not certified organic, mainly because we sell directly to our members, and our members come to the farm to pick up. I should back up and say, when I say members, we're CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. We ask members of the community to basically go through the season with us, to say, I stand by you thick and thin if it rains a lot, if it's dry, if we have a heavy tomato year, if we have a dry tomato year.